Hey YouTube, it's me, BrandonColonel. The next knife review that I've got coming at you is on the ZT-0350TS. Now for those of you that don't know the ZT line, ZT stands for Zero Tolerance. That is their logo right here. TS stands for Tiger Stripes. It's just the pattern that they put on the blade, which you can get this blade in many different styles. You can get this in the standard form, which is just the ZT-0350, and it has just straight black tungsten DLC, and it is the fine edge just like this, and it basically just imagine this matte black just like this, and that's the standard ZT-0350. You can get this in the ZT-0350ST, which is the matte black with a serrated edge right about here, and so it's basically a combo edge. You can get it in this form, which is the TS, and you can get this in the ST, or some complicated thing, TST or something like that. And serrated, it's basically serrated with tiger stripes, and then you can also get this in stonewashed, in both the combo edge and the plain edge. And then you can also get this in blackwashed with the combo edge or plain edge. And the blackwashed is basically they put matte black tungsten DLC. And for those of you that don't know what tungsten DLC is, it's tungsten diamond-like carbon coating. And it is a very hard material that you put over top of the blade, and it reduces the friction drag, and allowing you to cut a lot cleaner and smoother. And it also increases the hardness of the blade, so that way it'll keep its edge longer because the steel is harder. But basically what blackwashing does is that they put on the matte black tungsten DLC coating, and then they basically put it through a stone washer and to give it that already used broken in look, which personally I don't care for that, but some people want that because it gives that really roughed up look, and just that knife that you don't want to mess with because it just looks like it's been used heavily. And so some people want that. I don't really care for it because, for one, it would mess up the lack of friction on the knife, which is one of the reasons why I like this knife. And this is my all-time favorite knife. It just cuts so smoothly and so cleanly, and it is just easily my favorite knife in my entire collection. Now, as far as the length, it is 7 3/4 inches long overall from tip to heel. It is 3 1/4 inches long for the blade, and 4 1/2 inches for just the handle. It is 1.5 inches at its widest point, and it is 5/16 of an inch thick. So this is a really big, beefy blade, and it is very hefty as well. Now, personally, I really like a good blade with a lot of weight behind it. Excuse me. I really like a good blade with a lot of weight behind it, and because just really light knives, and sometimes they don't get the job done, and it's just a little bit too easy to start flipping them around and just lose control of the knife and have it go flying across the room somewhere. And that's happened a couple of times because when I'm trying to get it open really fast and then flip it into maybe reverse grip carry, then the knife just doesn't have any weight behind it, so you don't really get just how much force you're supposed to grip it with, and then it just goes flying out your hand somewhere, and then it can land in somebody's head. So I don't personally like all those really light knives. I prefer some with quite a bit of weight behind it. Now, I do like just about anything with a blade on it, but I do have my preferences as to what I will actually carry. So if it's too light, I probably won't carry it. Let's see. Probably the lightest knife that I actually carry would it be Let me see if I can get this thing out. It would probably be my Kershaw Asset, which I've already done a review on that. Let me see if I can get this thing out real quick. There we go. This knife is probably the lightest knife that I'll actually carry, because it's got a good substantial weight to it without being just overly light. And because I just don't care for lightweights. If it's too light, I will not carry it, plain and simple. But this has at least a decent weight. It's not too light, but it is light enough for you to just not even realize that you're carrying a knife if you've got it in your pocket. Whereas this thing, typically, if you're weight conscious, then you're gonna know this is in your pocket basically every second of the day. Now for me, this is just a regular part of my wardrobe, so it slips into my pocket and I forget it's there. So because I don't realize it is there because I always wear jeans, so the jeans hold it flawlessly, and so this thing just disappears in my pocket and I don't even realize it's there. Because after a few days of carrying anything, you're not even really going to realize that it's there anymore, just because of the fact that you're so used to carrying the knife at this point that no matter what you do, you just don't realize that it's there unless you're thinking about it. And but as far as actually carrying this thing, even from just the first 2 or 3 days that I was actually carrying it, it still is just not the type of knife that you really realize is there. There's just something about the way that it sits in your pocket that, unless you're doing some really awkward things, bending down and just doing really weird and awkward movements, and then this knife just disappears in your pocket and it moves with your leg, so you just don't even realize that it's there. As big and beefy as this thing is, it just disappears in your pocket. Now, as far as downsides of this knife, there are a few. This is a Ken Onion design, and Ken Onion is a phenomenal knife designer. He designs just excellent, high-quality knives, but he does have a few more tolerances than other people do. Say Rick Hinderer. Rick Hinderer is actually a step above ZT in the tolerances that he puts in his knives. He has no tolerances whatsoever for any imperfections. If it's not perfect, he'll take care of it. Whereas Ken Onion, he has a few more tolerances in his knives. He uses overcomplicated techniques, and not trying to bash him or anything, but he just uses overcomplicated techniques, like say the IKBS. It stands for Ikoma-Korth Bearing System. Now, that system uses a series of ball bearings that are lubed up, so that way when you open the knife, because all these bearings are around the pivot. Now, when this knife is opened, then the bearings come into play, and it reduces all friction, so that way there is just no friction opening this knife whatsoever. There is no speed loss due to friction, and it opens up about as smooth as you'll ever see. So this knife is it's going to open up just flawlessly. Now, you try to take it apart, and you're probably going to be in trouble. Because if you try to take a knife apart that has IKBS without knowing what to expect, then you're going to get ball bearings going everywhere, and your knife will never open properly again. And in fact, it may not even open again, because you may never put it back together. And you may just simply have to put the knife in a plastic baggie, send it back into the company and say, "Can you fix my knife?" Because Lord knows I can't. And so, for those of you that have an IKBS operating system with your knife, then consult YouTube first. Have them teach you how to take this knife apart and put it back together, because Lord knows inexperienced people are probably not going to get this thing apart very easily. Now, as for this knife, this is basically a simplified version of a Ken Onion knife. It is just the stainless steel liners, G10 scales. There is the backspacer, and it's got a torsion bar on the inside of it. Pretty much a simplified Ken Onion design. As far as what I don't like about the knife, then as people know who know Ken Onion, he doesn't like a single straight edge on his knife. Now, this curve right here, it's a little counterproductive in forward carry, because that becomes a little bit of a hot spot, just like right here in your hand, because that bulge just kind of gets a little annoying, and this point right here, it's almost like a tip, and that kind of wears on my finger, just like right in here, and it's not the most comfortable knife that I have. In fact, the Kershaw Asset, it actually does it a lot better, because it just feels like it's meant to go in your hand. So that handle design is just a lot more comfortable than this. But where the strength is at in this design is in reverse carry. This is a tactical knife through and through, basically designed in every way for fighting. So with the design like this actually just slips in your hand just effortlessly, and you can use this all day with virtually no hot spots. The only hot spot is just the edge right here. They could have tapered that a little bit, made it just a little bit smoother, maybe ground it off a little bit, but trying to make it cheaper than its big brother, the 0300, they couldn't exactly do all of that with this knife. So they had to cut costs somewhere, and I guess tapering it off, just making it a little bit smoother instead of it having such a sharp edge right there. And I guess that's one of the places where they had to cut costs at. So just nitpicking a little bit, but yeah, overall, this is where the grip is at as far as the extreme comfort. And now, as far as the jimping goes, they have jimping right where you want it, and it just locks into your thumb right here. And this is just the natural place to put your thumb, and they have it right there. And it's nice, aggressive jimping, just the way that I like it, without being overly aggressive and just ripping your thumb all to shreds. Now, if you're the kind of person that has a job where you just sit at a typewriter all day and you don't have any hardness to your hands at all, this may be a little bit too rough for you, and you may not want to carry that. But overall, for somebody who has a little bit rougher hands, then this is perfect for me, because it just grips your hand without a problem. And the reverse grip is, again, it's just right where you put your thumb, so therefore it just fits into your hand like a glove when it's in the reverse grip. And it has a recurve S30V blade. Now, the good thing about a recurve is it packs more cutting edge into a smaller blade. Now, I don't own this particular knife that I'm about to talk about, but I've seen a lot of reviews that are talking about this knife. And so for those of you that know the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, then even though this looks like a shorter blade, it's only shorter in the size of it. As far as the cutting edge, then there's actually more cutting edge in this knife than there is in the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. So, and you can look up reviewers that actually prove that in some way. They actually take a string and they measure how long this is with a string, and then they compare it to the Paramilitary 2, and this knife has more cutting edge. So that's a bit of a bonus. But another bonus of a recurve is if you actually do need to use it in a tactical situation where you're trying to fend off somebody else to protect your life, then this is a really good design for cutting into skin and just any kind of flesh in general, because the way that it curves, then if you're going across something, then before this part is even done making its initial cut, this part is already making a cut. So you get even more cutting surface, because you're basically starting 2 cuts for the price of one. 1 slash, 2 and 2 cuts. And so it just makes it an even more wicked cut. And it curves with the body, so you can basically go around somebody's arm, and it kind of acts in the same way as a karambit does, which the entire point of behind a karambit was to curve with human skin, so that way you could fend off attackers easily. And now I know that the karambit did start off as like a harvest knife, but there were modifications made in order to make it more compatible with fighting, and that it was just a perfect design as far as fighting goes. Now, back to this knife, it has a tungsten DLC coating, which means diamond-like carbon coating. It reduces the friction drag, and it just makes it so much easier to glide through, because without that extra friction drag, you can just slice into something so much easier, but it also increases the hardness of the blade. Now, being such a hard blade, and then adding tungsten DLC to make it even harder, this thing is an absolute pain in the neck to sharpen. This is just a freaking pain in the butt. If you don't have diamond to sharpen this thing, you're going to be spending quite some time on this knife if you need it to ever sharpen it. Because even though it takes forever to get this thing dull, once it gets dull, there is basically no saving this knife unless you have diamond. Basically, send it back to the company, just wait a month, and then be happy with the edge that they put on it. But if you plan on sharpening this thing yourself, go out, spend about $30 on a new sharpener, because there's 2 sharpeners that I actually use, and let me get them out for you. Because you really have to see the type of stuff that I'm talking about in order to really know what I'm talking about. Because otherwise, I can say rod files all day long, but if you don't know what a rod file is, it's not going to help you. Now, if you're just trying to put a rough edge on your knife and you don't really care about how smooth it is, then this is all that you would need. It looks like a pen. I think it was made by Smith's. Let me see. Yeah, it's a Smith's sharpener, and it has a telescopic diamond file that comes out right here. And then you just tighten it down. Basically, the reason why you want a rod file for a recurve blade is because if you have, say, some kind of a flat stone, which I know this isn't a stone, but it works. If you don't have some kind of a curve to it, then I don't know if you can see that too well, but the entire blade is not actually touching the stone. It's only going to be touching it at 2 points. And then the inside of the curve is not going to be touching it at all. Sure, you can get it right here, where it curves upward and it's basically a drop point. But in that curve, it's not going to get sharp. And so it's just not going to be productive for you. Whereas with a curve like this, then it just hugs all those curves inside of this recurve without a problem. Now, this was about maybe $8, so this is not very expensive, and it takes off a lot of steel from S30V. In fact, maybe about 10 passes on each side, and I had it just as sharp as I wanted it to be. As far as getting it smooth, that's a different story, because this is a very high grit stone. So you need something to get it smooth if you actually want it to be if you want it to be a really good edge. I mean, after I'm actually sharpening with the diamond, then this was a very rough edge, and it tore through paper. It didn't cleanly cut it at all. It was just too rough. Now, this is what I got for making it even smoother. It is a Lansky sharpener, and basically what it does is in here they hide 4 ceramic rods, and you just pop them out, and on here is a 25 degree sorry, my computer shut off for a second, is a 25 degree angle and a 20 degree angle. Basically you just simply put the rods in here like this, and then you put it on a flat surface, hold it, and then you just simply go down. Just simply keep the knife straight up, and then you pull back, making sure to put some form of pressure on these rods, so that way you can actually take off some steel. And then once you're done with these gray rods, then you just simply put it back, and then you flip it over again, and you take out the white rods, put it in the same angle, and then you just go back through again, just like that. But again, make sure that it's on a flat surface. And this was about 20, maybe 25 bucks. I got it at my local Academy Sports, and this works phenomenally. It will not sharpen your knife, but it will hone the edge and make it smoother. So that way, it's basically about as close to factory sharp as you'll ever get. Because if you really want it factory sharp, then you're going to have to find polishing tapes. And because the polishing tapes make it just like mirror smooth. And you can literally see your reflection in the edge. Now, I can't really see my reflection in this because, like I said, I'm just using the ceramic honers. Excuse me, my voice going out. So I'm just simply using the ceramic honers. And now, don't get me wrong, it is razor sharp once you get it off there. And maybe once every week, maybe 2 weeks, touch up on the honer, and it'll retain that razor sharp edge no matter what you're doing with this knife. Because this will keep an edge for like 2, maybe 3 months tops. And that's under heavy sustained use. There are people who I've seen who literally have yet to sharpen their knife after a year of heavy and sustained use. The person that originally got me to buy this knife was my youth pastor. And the day that I bought my knife is the day that he sharpened his. And that was the day that I bought mine was a year after he had already owned his. So, and that was the first time that he had ever sharpened his knife. So there are knives out there that can handle it for that long, and he uses his knife almost every day on just really obscene stuff. So he puts his knife to use. Excuse me. But so this thing can handle a lot of abuse. I use it on cardboard. Yeah, got the hiccups too. And I use my knife on cardboard, so that really takes a lot out of a knife, because there's a lot of stuff in cardboard that people don't know about. There's dust and dirt and debris all throughout cardboard, little bits of rock. Just the way that they make cardboard, it really puts your knife through a beating when you're cutting through it. It is one of the worst things you can use a knife on, is cutting through cardboard. So that's probably one of the reasons why my knife dulled so fast, because there are people who say that they use it with leather. Now, leather is actually used as a strop, and that can fold your edge down due to all the friction. Now, and they still don't have to sharpen the edge on their knife for any length of time, really, because it just glides straight through it. But cardboard is one of the most evil things you can put your knife through. And so this is a really good knife that'll keep an edge for a phenomenal period of time. But if you're trying to sharpen it, it will be a pain in the neck, especially if you use just like regular stones, like say an Arkansas natural stone rod. Well, not a rod, but like just like the natural stone file. Arkansas stones are incredibly soft, and they are nowhere near as hard as they need to be to sharpen this knife. Because in order to sharpen something, what you're using as a sharpener has to be even harder than the knife that you're sharpening. And those stones are just nowhere near as hard as they need to be. So, in a survival situation, I would be happy to have this knife. If it ever gets dull, this would be the bane of my existence. Reason being, I can't use a dull knife. And there is nothing in nature that I can think about that would actually sharpen this knife that would be free and handy for me to use. Because there's just not many things out there that are hard enough in nature that I can get my hands on easily to be able to sharpen S30B. And if it takes me close to 2 hours to sharpen this thing with the sharpeners that are designed for this thing, think about how much more difficult it'll be to sharpen it in nature with stuff that are not meant to sharpen a knife, but on top of that, are not really hard enough to be able to even cut this for anything. So that's just it. That's something to think about when you're getting this knife. If it's something that you're putting in a bug-out bag, then make sure to include sharpeners for this thing, because if you don't have a good sharpener, this thing is worthless to you. Because you will definitely need some kind of sharpener that can actually cut this. So, like I said, that's just something to think about. Now, as far as the flipper, it is very easily used. Gloved hands, bare hands. It just has a torsion bar, which there are some people who actually want to de-assist this knife and take out the torsion bar, and I've actually done that. Believe it or not, it flips out faster without the torsion bar. The only problem that I do have with it when it's de-assisted is just there's that possibility of the knife failing when it opens. As what I mean by that is that the knife doesn't open all the way, and I mean you can get used to it and basically open it 100% of the time, but there's always that possibility that it just won't completely open. Now it's on brass bushings and I think phosphor bronze washers and something like that, but so it just glides open even without the torsion bar. But like I said, there's just that possibility of it not completely opening, then you having to flick it out with your hand. And in a tactical situation where you're possibly fighting for your life, that torsion bar just giving you that assurance that it's going to open no matter what you do. And then I can actually just try to flip it out as slow as possible, and it still opens up every time. You literally have to tighten it down to the point where when you do that, then it will finally fail. But if you put any speed in it whatsoever, that torsion bar will take over. So as long as you're not grabbing it with both hands, trying to do it as slowly as possible, then this thing will open every single time, no matter what tightness you put it to, really. And this is just a very well-built, well-designed knife. And so, as far as the finger choil goes, it is very generous. You just lock your finger in place right there, and the flipper actually becomes a blade guard. So it is really good that that's there, and the way that it's curved, it curves with the finger choil. In fact, if you actually run your hand across it, you can barely tell where the finger choil ends and where the blade guard starts. It is that seamless. And they say that there's a lanyard hole on there, and which it is just right there. And the problem with it is that it's not big enough even for gutted paracord. You basically have to fit these 7 inner strands through that in order for you to say that you can have paracord. But you can't fit a gutted strand in there. You can't fit a regular strand in there. You can probably fit shoelace through there, as long as the aglet is small enough to go through. But as far as actually fitting some form of paracord, no. You would have to find the smallest paracord in all of human history and fit that through there if you want to be able to say you can fit paracord. But the clip is 4 positions, so you can carry it left-handed, right-handed, tip up, tip down, I prefer mine right-handed, tip up, because that's just easier for a tactical situation. I can pull mine out and automatically have my finger on the button. I can literally get this out in less than 1 second flat. And there's also a cutout right here on the back end of the knife, so you can just get in and do some really detailed cuts in here, and just really get in on the blade. It is a peritanto tip, which basically means that it keeps the same thickness all the way through, right up until this wicked tip. The back end has been reinforced, and so you can stab this knife through just about anything and not have to worry about that tip breaking off. Now, it is also a liner lock, which that liner is about as thick as other frame locks that I've seen in comparison. This is a very thick liner lock, and I have yet to see this knife fail for anything. That it just won't fail. And I've actually tried to get this thing to fail before. It won't. So I've never done like a spine whacking test on it before, but then again, when am I going to be using a spine whack on my knife in a real life situation? When I test a knife, then I actually think that you should test a knife the way it's designed to be used. So dropping it, seeing if it fails when you drop it, see if it comes open when you drop it. Just things that would actually happen in real life. If it fails then, sure, it doesn't pass a test. If it can fail with normal hand pressure on it, then yeah, it's not a good knife. But if you're just doing a spine whacking test on it and then it fails, okay, you put about 100 pounds of force behind that thing and directly on the spine, about right here. Yeah, if the knife failed, sure, that's not exactly the best knife on the planet, but you can't exactly say it's bad. You put 100 pounds of force directly on the spine, all on the liner. And that may not be good for a knife, but you're probably to blame if you do that, actually. So I honestly don't recommend spine whack tests for anything to see if the knife is good. Sure, if it passes it, great. If it doesn't, okay, it's not the knife's fault. You put 100 pounds of force behind it. And but overall, this is a really good knife. It is my favorite knife. You can actually find this in certain places for under $100. I've heard that you can actually find them for about $70. Now, if you buy it online, then I've seen them go for as much as I want to say $150, $180. I've seen them go for as much as that, and you can actually buy them on Amazon for about $70. And I got mine in person for $150. And so, honestly, I would actually pay the extra amount so that way I can go and handle it for myself. There's no blade. There's a little minuscule amount of blade play from side to side, but just a simple tighten screw can fix that. But even after a year of heavy use, there is no front and back blade play. I can't even force it. This thing is just phenomenally built. But there is, even after a year of use, you can barely see any scratches anywhere. There's a little bit of scratching here where I've pierced boxes before. And there's, let me see if I can focus in on this. There's that one little teeny tiny scratch right there from where I messed up sharpening it with a new sharpening rod. There's just a little bit of scratching on the tip right here, again from where I'm piercing boxes all day. There's it won't even show up on camera, but there's you can't even see any scratches on the G10, but if you're looking at it in the right light when you're looking at it in person, there's just a couple of scratches every now and again, but it's more where maybe my nails scraped across it for whatever reason, and then just left a residue behind it that I can't seem to get off. There's just a little bit of of wear on this part right. Sorry, still getting used to how my camera works. But there's just a little bit of wear right here next to the pocket clip area. That's from where the clip initially came, and I took it off. So that way I could put it in reverse grip. Reverse carry. And basically, that just shows you just how tight these clips are. That is a very solid clip. And if you have really thin pants made of like cloth, this will probably tear up your pockets. So you may want to find a way to maybe get a shiv inside of this, like a shim, and so that way you can maybe lessen the strength of it. Just some kind of thing to put between the pocket clip and the G10 scales, so that way you can just reduce it, how much strength is on there. Now personally, I couldn't care less, because it still slides in and out without a problem to me, and I only wear dress pants maybe once a week, so there's no problem there. Once my pants tear up, they're torn up, and I just get a new pair. So I mean, there's no reason to really pull it out except to put it in the pants, take it out of the pants when I get home. Excuse me. So overall, this is a phenomenal knife. I love it. It is my favorite knife, and when my taxes come back, I'll actually be getting a new ZT. So keep your eye out for that. It'll probably be a month, maybe two, but that review will be coming in a while, and won't tell you which one I'm getting. So just keep your eye out for it. But even when I get my new ZT, this will still be in the rotation, because I just love this knife so much. It'll always be in my rotation, and if this knife ever gets out of specs for me to where I can't carry it anymore, I'll see if I can't still just send it back into Kai USA and say, hey, can you fix this thing so I can still carry it? And if they can't, then I can guarantee you I will find some way to buy a new one of these so I can carry it still. Because this is just my all-time favorite knife. It is nearly perfect. And like I said, there are some problems with it, some hot spots every now and again, but this is a very good knife. And seeing as I've been rambling on for 38 minutes, just about 38 minutes, about one knife, yeah, this is a good knife with a lot to talk about. And so I could probably go on and tell you more about it. I mean, the machining on here is just so smooth that there is like no scale is any bigger than any other part. I mean, even on the Kershaw asset, there's a little bit of a failure to make sure that it was completely in line with everything else. It's not quite as smooth. The Kershaw tone definitely is not as smooth as it can be. There's still a couple of sharp edges every now and again, but this, it is smooth as butter. There is just nothing here, and that it's just the same way all the way around. So, like I said, I can keep going, but this is just a phenomenal knife, and it is my all-time favorite at the moment. So, as always, YouTubers, stay safe.